She was just a little girl with a broken family. Her parents divorced, her mom struggling, and her dad nowhere to be found. But when she stumbles upon a shocking secret about her father, everything changes. Could it be true? It all began on a rainy autumn evening in a small, run-down apartment on the edge of the city. 8-year-old Emma sat at the cracked kitchen table, drawing on the back of a used envelope while her mother, Grace, quietly prepared dinner. The flickering light overhead added a dim glow to the peeling wallpaper, and the muffled sounds of traffic filtered through the single drafty window. Emma was an imaginative soul, her bright blue eyes always seeking beauty, even in the humblest of settings. Tonight, though, she was unusually quiet. Grace couldn't help but notice the melancholy etched into her daughter's face. "Mom," Emma whispered, her voice carrying a weight too heavy for her small frame. "Why did Dad leave us?" Grace froze, her hands gripping the worn spatula a little too tightly. She had spent years perfecting her brave smile, but tonight it cracked just a little. "Sometimes grown-ups just don't know how to stay," she replied gently. "But that doesn't mean he didn't love you." Emma's brow furrowed. "But if he loved us, why doesn't he come back?" Grace bit her lip, her heart aching at the raw innocence of the question. She couldn't tell Emma the truth, that her father, Michael, had chosen his ambition over his family, vanishing from their lives to chase dreams of wealth and success. After dinner, when Emma had fallen asleep on the couch, Grace stared at the framed photo on the dusty mantel. Their family before everything fell apart. It was a simpler time when Michael still played his guitar in the tiny living room, and Emma would dance barefoot on the scuffed floor. Lost in her thoughts, Grace almost didn't hear the soft hum of Emma's laptop still open on the table. Curiosity piqued. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widening as she read the headline. Michael Dalton, the billionaire who built an empire from nothing. Grace's pulse quickened. She clicked on the article, her hands trembling. There was Michael, clean-shaven, impeccably dressed, with the city skyline behind him. The man who once couldn't pay their rent was now a self-made mogul. At that moment, Emma stirred and sat up, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mom, what are you looking at?" Grace quickly closed the laptop. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just work stuff." But Emma wasn't so easily fooled. She noticed the way her mom's hand shook and how her gaze seemed far away. The next morning, while Grace was at her cleaning job, Emma reopened the laptop and found the article. Her eyes widened as she saw the photo of her father, looking powerful and happy. That night, Emma whispered into the quiet, her tiny voice determined. "If Dad's a billionaire, why doesn't he help us?" In her mind, a plan was already forming. Emma decided that if her dad wasn't coming back, she would find a way to bring him back herself. The next few days, Emma couldn't get the thought out of her mind. How could her dad have become so rich while they were left struggling? Curiosity gnawed at her, but she didn't dare bring it up to Grace again. One rainy afternoon after school, Emma found herself in the local library, sitting in front of a computer. She typed in her dad's name, and hundreds of articles appeared. Michael Dalton, billionaire CEO of Dalton Enterprises. There were interviews, charity event photos, and business accolades. One headline caught her eye, "From Rags to Riches: How One Man's Ambition Changed His Life." Emma clicked on it, her small fingers trembling. As she read, her mind whirled. How could this powerful man be the same dad who used to play hide and seek with her? Why didn't he come back for them once he made it big? Determined to find answers, Emma jotted down the company's address from an article and tucked the paper into her pocket. That night, she didn't mention it to Grace, who was already worn out from a double shift. The next morning, on her way to school, Emma took a detour. She walked down the busy city streets, clutching the crumpled address. When she finally reached the tall glass building, she looked up in awe. The Dalton Enterprises logo gleamed in the sunlight. She tried to enter, but the receptionist stopped her. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" Emma shook her head. "I'm looking for Michael Dalton. He's my dad." The receptionist looked surprised, but softened at Emma's earnest expression. "Honey, you can't just walk in without an appointment. Does your mom know you're here?" Emma hesitated. "Not exactly. I just want to see him." Just then, A tall woman in a sleek suit appeared. Angela, the company's chief advisor. She glanced at Emma with a hint of suspicion. "What's going on here?" The receptionist explained, and Angela's eyes narrowed. "Take her to the lounge. I'll deal with this." Angela knelt down to Emma's level, her voice deceptively gentle. "You say Michael Dalton is your father?" Emma nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Angela smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Why don't you wait here, sweetheart? I'll make some calls." Emma's stomach churned as Angela walked away, already dialing her phone. Back at the office, Angela stormed into Michael's room. "We have a situation. There's a little girl downstairs claiming to be your daughter." Michael froze. "What did you say?" Angela crossed her arms. "I thought you said you didn't have a family." His heart pounded. I thought I didn't." Angela scoffed. "She looks just like you, Michael. What are you going to do?" Without another word, Michael rushed downstairs. When he saw Emma sitting on the leather couch, swinging her legs nervously, his heart shattered. She looked up, her face lighting up with hope. "Dad!" Michael hesitated, guilt washing over him. "Emma, what are you doing here?" She bit her lip. "I came to see you. Mom doesn't know." Angela hovered in the doorway, her presence cold and judgmental. Michael took a deep breath, realizing just how much he had missed. He crouched down, taking Emma's hands. "Let's go somewhere we can talk, okay?" Emma nodded, relief softening her features. As Michael guided her outside, he knew that nothing would be the same from this moment on. Michael led Emma to a nearby park, the crisp autumn air swirling leaves around their feet. He knelt beside her on a bench, trying to wrap his mind around the situation. Emma looked up at him, her wide eyes full of hope. "Dad, why did you leave us?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Michael swallowed hard. How could he explain that his ambition had driven him away from the family he once loved? That the allure of success had blinded him to the cost of his choices? I thought I was doing the right thing," he admitted, guilt clawing at his heart. "I thought if I became successful, I could give you and your mom a better life." Emma's small hand reached for his. "But we didn't need all that. We just needed you." His chest tightened. How had he been so blind? He hadn't considered that in his quest for wealth, he'd left behind the most important people in his life. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Angela. Reluctantly, he answered. "Michael." Angela's voice was tight, irritation seeping through. "You can't just walk out in the middle of a meeting. Your investors are waiting." Michael clenched his jaw. "Tell them I'm dealing with something more important right now." Angela's scoff was audible. "Your daughter, I assume? I hope you realize what this could do to your reputation. You've spent years building an image, and suddenly having a long-lost daughter appear could." He cut her off. "Angela, I don't care about my image right now. This is my daughter, my priority." Angela hesitated, but her tone softened slightly. "Just don't forget about the board meeting later." She hung up without waiting for his reply. Michael turned back to Emma, his face softening. "I want to know everything, Emma. What have I missed?" Emma's eyes brightened. "Mom and I live in a little apartment now. She works really hard. Sometimes she's tired and sad, but she always makes sure I'm happy. We don't have a lot, but we have each other." A pang of guilt hit him harder than he expected. He hadn't realized just how much Grace had sacrificed to make up for his absence. "Does your mom know you came here?" he asked gently. Emma shook her head. "No, I just wanted to see you. I thought, if you knew where we lived, maybe you'd come back." His heart ached at her simple logic, so pure and hopeful. He wanted to tell her that he had thought about coming back countless times, but his own shame had kept him away. He didn't know how to face Grace after abandoning them. As they sat in silence, Emma reached into her small backpack and pulled out a crumpled drawing. It showed a stick-figure family, her, Grace, and Michael, all holding hands. At the bottom, in her careful, childish writing, it read, "Family forever." Tears stung his eyes. Emma nudged the drawing toward him. "You can have it. I made it when I was little. I always thought you'd come home one day, and I'd show you." Michael took the paper, his hands trembling. He hadn't cried in years, but now the tears were relentless. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I never wanted to hurt you." Emma wrapped her arms around him, her warmth easing the ache in his chest. "It's okay, Dad. You're here now. But the peace of the moment shattered when a familiar voice cut through the air. Grace stood at the edge of the path, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Grace rushed toward them, her face flushed with panic. "The school called me and said you were missing. I've been looking everywhere for you." Emma froze, guilt flashing across her face. "Mom, I just wanted to see Dad." Grace's gaze shifted to Michael, and her expression hardened. "You had no right to take her." "I didn't take her," Michael said softly. "She found me." Grace's anger didn't waver. "You don't get to just walk back into her life because it's convenient for you." Emma, sensing the tension, squeezed her father's hand. "Mom, he didn't know. He's sorry." But Grace's pain ran deep, and years of resentment made her voice sharp. "Sorry doesn't fix the years you were gone." Michael wanted to say something, to promise he'd make it right, but he knew words wouldn't be enough. Not this time. Grace's hands trembled as she pulled Emma to her side, her protective instincts on high alert. Michael stayed on the bench, his guilt weighing him down. He hadn't anticipated this moment, facing Grace after all these years. "Emma, go wait by the swings," Grace instructed softly, trying to keep her voice steady. Reluctantly, Emma glanced at her father before shuffling away. Once Emma was out of earshot, Grace turned back to Michael, her expression a mix of anger and pain. "What do you think you're doing? You can't just show up out of nowhere and confuse her like this." Michael rose to his feet, his own frustration surfacing. "I didn't know she was coming to find me. I had no idea." Grace shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "You never had any idea, did you? You left without a word, and now you're acting like you're some hero for finally showing up." Michael's shoulders sagged. "I made mistakes. I know that. But I never stopped thinking about you too." Grace scoffed. "Thinking isn't the same as being there, Michael. You chose your career over us. You didn't even look back." Michael swallowed, guilt gnawing at his insides. "I thought, if I made something of myself, I could come back and take care of you both. I didn't realize how much I was losing in the process." Grace folded her arms, trying to mask the hurt that had been buried for so long. "You didn't lose us, Michael. You left us. There's a difference." A silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken regrets. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice softer. "I didn't know how to come back. After I made it big, I thought about reaching out, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid I couldn't fix what I broke." Grace's eyes softened for just a moment before her resolve hardened again. "It's not about fixing things. It's about taking responsibility. I've been raising Emma on my own, working double shifts, sacrificing everything to give her a decent life. Meanwhile, you were living in luxury." Michael looked down at the ground, unable to meet her gaze. "I didn't know. I thought you moved on." Grace let out a bitter laugh. "Moved on? How could I? I was left picking up the pieces." And Emma, she never stopped wondering why her dad didn't love her enough to stay. Those words cut deeper than any insult. Michael wiped his face, struggling to keep his composure. "I never stopped loving her. Or you." Grace didn't respond. Her heart was too guarded to let his words sink in. She watched Emma on the swings, her little feet kicking the air, blissfully unaware of the adult world's complications. Then, Grace took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay strong. "You can't just show up and expect to be a father, Michael. It doesn't work like that." Michael's jaw clenched. "I know, but I want to try. I want to make it right. Emma deserves that." Grace hesitated, torn between the anger that had sustained her and the faint glimmer of hope that things could be different. "You don't just get to waltz in and disrupt her life. I've worked too hard to keep her safe from disappointment." Michael stepped closer, his voice firm but sincere. "I don't want to disrupt her life. I just want to be part of it. Please, let me try." Grace looked at him, trying to gauge the sincerity in his eyes. She hated that a part of her still longed for the man she once loved, the dreamer who used to play songs just for her. But that man had vanished years ago, replaced by someone harder and more distant. Finally, she spoke, her tone cautious. "If you hurt her again, I'll never forgive you. Do you understand that?" Michael nodded, determination igniting in his gaze. "I understand. I won't let her down again." Grace looked away, not ready to fully believe him. "We'll see. For now, let's just take it one step at a time. Michael's heart lifted just slightly. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a chance to prove himself not just to Emma, but to Grace as well. The days that followed were a tentative dance of reconnection. Michael texted Grace cautiously, suggesting small outings with Emma, a trip to the local park, ice cream after school. Grace remained guarded, insisting on supervising every interaction. One sunny afternoon, Michael picked up Emma from school, and they strolled through the park. Emma's hands were sticky from melting chocolate ice cream, and her giggles filled the air as Michael spun her around. For a moment, almost felt normal, a glimpse of the family he had once dreamed of. As they sat on a park bench, Emma looked up at him, her blue eyes wide with curiosity. "Dad, why did you become a billionaire?" Michael chuckled softly, unsure how to explain his life choices to an 8-year-old. "I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to be someone important." Emma tilted her head. "But aren't moms important too, even if they don't have money?" Her innocent question struck a nerve, and Michael nodded slowly. "Yes, sweetheart, moms are the most important." Emma seemed satisfied with that answer and started humming a tune, kicking her legs. Michael glanced at his phone, noticing a text from Grace. "Everything okay?" He replied with a simple, "Yes." "She's happy." But as he looked up, his heart sank. Across the park, he saw Angela approaching, her heels clicking against the cobblestones. She didn't belong here, in this quiet, intimate moment. "Michael," she greeted, barely glancing at Emma. "We need to discuss the charity gala. It's in 2 days, and the board expects you to be present. You can't just vanish from your responsibilities." Michael clenched his jaw, sensing Emma shrinking against his side. "I'm busy right now." Angela's eyes flickered with annoyance. "You can't afford to neglect your public image. The press has already picked up whispers about your sudden family reunion. We need to control the narrative." Emma looked between them, confused. "What's she talking about, Dad?" Michael put his arm around her protectively. "Nothing important, honey." Angela sighed, clearly unimpressed. "Michael, the board is worried. You've been unfocused. This distraction needs to be managed." His patience snapped. "She's not a distraction. She's my daughter." Angela didn't flinch, but her tone grew colder. "Your reputation is built on discipline and success. You don't have the luxury of being sentimental." Emma's face fell, and Michael noticed. He lowered his voice, trying to keep his anger in check. "Go back to the office, Angela. I'll deal with the gala later." She hesitated, eyes narrowing. "Don't let this mistake ruin everything you've built, Michael." As Angela walked away, Michael turned back to Emma, who was tracing patterns on the bench with her fingers. "Dad, am I a mistake?" His heart broke. He pulled her into a hug, whispering against her hair. "Never. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." Emma clung to him, her small hands gripping his shirt. "Then why did she say that?" Michael struggled to find the right words. "Sometimes adults say things that don't make sense." "You're not a mistake, Emma. You're my daughter, and I'm proud of you." Grace appeared then, having seen the end of the conversation from a distance. She approached cautiously, her gaze shifting from Michael to Emma. "Everything okay here?" Michael gave a faint smile. "Yeah, just some work stuff." Grace knelt beside Emma, brushing the hair from her face. "Did something happen?" Emma hesitated, looking at Michael for reassurance. He nodded gently. "Some lady said I was a mistake," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Grace's eyes hardened, and she pulled Emma into her arms. "That's not true. You're the most amazing little girl in the world." Michael looked at Grace, his guilt growing. "I didn't know Angela would show up. I am sorry." Grace sighed. "You need to set boundaries with your work, Michael. Emma's fragile. She doesn't understand the way your world works." He nodded, realizing just how much he had underestimated the complexity of blending his new life with the one he'd left behind. For the first time, Grace's expression softened. If you really want to be part of her life, you need to put her first. Not your business, not your reputation. Michael swallowed his pride. "You're right. I'll figure it out." As they walked home, Emma holding both their hands, Michael couldn't help but feel like he was finally taking a step toward redemption. But he knew the real challenge lay ahead, proving that he could be the father Emma deserved. The night of the charity gala arrived faster than Michael anticipated. Despite his desire to keep things low-key, Angela had ensured that every major media outlet knew he would be attending. The event was hosted at one of his luxury hotels, the grand ballroom adorned with glittering chandeliers and sleek modern decor. As Michael adjusted his tie in a mirror, his phone buzzed with a text from Grace. "Emma's a bit sad tonight. She thought you'd be spending the evening with her." Guilt crept in, but before he could respond, Angela entered his suite unannounced. "You look respectable enough," she remarked dryly. Michael frowned. "Did you have to invite the press?" Angela raised an eyebrow. "It's a charity gala. Your presence boosts donations. Besides, we need to counter the rumors circulating after your sudden reunion with your daughter." He couldn't help but notice how she hesitated before saying daughter, as if the word itself was distasteful. "She's not a rumor, Angela. She's my family." Angela barely contained her frustration. "You've built an empire, Michael. You can't let personal distractions tear it down. You have a reputation to uphold." Michael's gaze hardened. "Maybe my reputation needs to change." Angela stiffened, but before she could retort, his phone buzzed again, this time a call from Grace. He picked up immediately. "Michael, can you come by after the gala? Emma's been asking for you all night." He glanced at the bustling room beyond the suite door. "Of course. I'll come as soon as I can." Angela watched him with disapproval as he hung up. This isn't the time for family drama. Focus on the event. But Michael was already distracted, his mind with Emma. As the gala began, he moved through the crowd like a ghost, nodding politely but not engaging. When Angela nudged him toward a group of investors, he could barely focus on the conversation. An hour later, as the speeches droned on, Michael couldn't take it anymore. He slipped out of the ballroom, ignoring Angela's furious glare from across the room. He arrived at Grace's apartment within the hour, still in his suit, his tie loosened and his jacket folded over his arm. Grace looked surprised but relieved. "You came." He nodded. "Where's Emma?" Grace gestured to the small living room, where Emma was curled up on the couch, her face buried in a worn teddy bear. Michael knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Hey, sunshine." Emma's eyes fluttered open, and her face lit up when she saw him. "Dad, you came back." His heart twisted. "Of course I did. I promised, didn't I?" Emma sat up, still clutching the teddy bear. "I thought maybe you'd forget." Like before, Michael swallowed the lump in his throat. "Never again. I'll always come back. I promise." Grace watched from the doorway. Her expression softened. "You missed your big event," she pointed out quietly. Michael shrugged. "There will be more galas. But Emma needed me tonight. That's what matters." Grace hesitated before speaking. "I was scared you'd choose your business over her." Like before, he looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "I almost did, but I realized something tonight. Success doesn't mean anything if I'm not the man my daughter needs me to be." Grace let that sink in, the tension between them slowly melting. "Maybe you're starting to understand what it means to be a father." Emma wrapped her arms around Michael's neck, and for the first time in years, he felt like he belonged. He kissed the top of her head, whispering, "I'm not going anywhere." As the night went on, they sat together on the couch, watching an old animated movie Emma loved. Michael couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so content. Grace brought over a bowl of popcorn, and for just a moment, it was as if nothing had changed, like they were a family again. Grace glanced at Michael, her expression thoughtful. "You know, if you really want to make things right, it's going to take more than just showing up once in a while." He nodded. "I know. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes." As the credits rolled and Emma fell asleep between them, Michael realized that this was the life he had been searching for all along. Not the endless meetings or flashy galas, but this quiet, simple happiness with the people he loved. The next morning, Emma was still asleep, curled up between them on the couch. Grace quietly made coffee in the kitchen, and Michael joined her, leaning against the counter. For a moment, it was like old times, sharing a quiet morning before the world woke up. "She was so happy you came back," Grace whispered, careful not to wake Emma. Michael nodded, his gaze softening. "I miss so much. I can't believe how much she's grown." Grace poured the coffee, her voice hesitant. "You know, when you left, I was angry for a long time. Angry that you chose your career over us. But mostly, I was scared that I wasn't enough for her. Michael looked at her, guilt twisting his gut. Grace, you've been more than enough. You've done everything I couldn't. Raised her, loved her, protected her. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Grace glanced down at the steaming cup. It wasn't easy, but I had to keep going. For her. Silence hung between them, filled with years of unspoken pain and regrets. Finally, Grace took a deep breath. She's been drawing you ever since she could hold a crayon. Every Father's Day, she makes a card and keeps it in a box because she never knew where to send it. Michael closed his eyes, fighting back tears. I never knew. I thought you both would be better off without me. I was too ashamed to come back. Grace studied his face, sensing the truth in his words. You're here now. That's what matters. A sudden knock on the door interrupted their moment. Grace frowned, wiping her hands on a dish towel as she went to answer it. When she opened the door, Angela stood there, her face twisted in annoyance. Michael, she snapped, you left the gala without a word. Do you have any idea how many calls I've fielded on your behalf? Grace's eyes narrowed. Who is this? Michael sighed. Angela, I thought I made it clear that I was dealing with something personal. Angela scoffed, stepping inside without invitation. Your personal drama is affecting business, Michael. The board wants answers. They're questioning your commitment. Grace's expression hardened, maybe because he's finally committing to something that matters. Angela gave her a cold once-over. And you are? I'm the mother of his daughter, Grace replied firmly, standing her ground. Angela's eyes widened briefly before she recovered. Michael, you can't throw away everything you've built for this. Michael straightened, his tone firm. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing what's important. I can still run my company without neglecting my family. Angela huffed. The media is circling like vultures. If they find out you have a secret child, she's not a secret. She's my daughter, and I'm done hiding from it. Michael interrupted, his voice resolute. Angela hesitated, clearly not used to being challenged. You're making a mistake. You spent years cultivating your image. Grace crossed her arms, her voice calm but cutting. Maybe his image doesn't matter as much as his family does. Angela's lips pressed into a thin line. Fina, just know that the board won't be pleased with your distraction. Michael didn't flinch. Let them be displeased. My priorities have changed. With that, Angela finally left defeated. Grace turned to Michael, a hint of a smile on her lips. Did you just choose us over your empire? He smiled back, a sense of peace settling over him. I'm finally realizing that being successful means nothing if I'm not the father Emma needs, or the man you can depend on. Grace softened, her defenses slowly crumbling. She's always wanted her dad back, and part of me never stopped hoping you'd come back too. Before he could respond, Emma stirred on the couch, yawning sleepily. Mom? Dad? They both moved to her side, and Emma blinked up at them with a sleepy smile. Are we having breakfast together? Michael ruffled her hair. You bet. Pancakes sound good. Emma nodded enthusiastically, and Grace gave him a curious look. You're cooking? Michael grinned, rolling up his sleeves. It's about time I learned. As they gathered in the small kitchen, preparing a chaotic but joyful breakfast, Michael couldn't help but feel like he was finally where he belonged, by Grace's side, with his daughter, reclaiming the life he thought he had lost forever. Breakfast was a chaotic, syrup-filled affair, with Emma directing the pancake making while Michael did his best not to burn them. Grace couldn't help but laugh as flour ended up on Michael's shirt and batter splattered on the counter. After breakfast, they sat around the small dining table, plates empty, but hearts full. Emma was drawing on a napkin, humming to herself. Grace poured another cup of coffee, still processing the whirlwind of the past few days. Michael leaned back in his chair, watching Emma with a quiet smile. I miss this. Just being here. Grace met his gaze, the tension that had always lingered between them finally easing. You know, Emma's always been resilient. She's had to be. But seeing her like this, happy, it's been a long time. Michael nodded, his voice sincere. I'm not just going to be a visitor in her life, Grace. I want to be here, consistently. Before Grace could respond, Emma looked up from her drawing. Dad, can you come to my school's family day next week? All the other kids bring their dads. The hopeful look in her eyes was enough to break his heart. Michael reached out and took her hand. Of course I will. I wouldn't miss it. Grace's phone buzzed on the counter. She checked the message and frowned. The landlord again. He's been hinting about raising the rent. Michael's protective instincts kicked in. You're struggling to keep up? Grace hesitated, but then nodded. It's been tight lately. I've been picking up extra shifts to cover everything. A thought crossed Michael's mind. What if you and Emma move in with me? I have plenty of space, and it would give us a chance to be together as a family. Grace looked at him, uncertainty in her eyes. That's a big step. I don't want Emma getting her hopes up only to be disappointed again. He moved closer, his expression earnest. I'm not leaving again, Grace. I promise you that. I want us to be a family, properly this time. Emma perked up, excitement flickering in her eyes. Does that mean we'll all live together? Grace bit her lip, still unsure. Michael, I need time to think about it. I protected her heart for so long. I can't just uproot everything because you suddenly decided you want us back. He nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'll prove it to you both. As they cleaned up, Grace couldn't help but notice how natural it felt. Working side by side, sharing small smiles, Emma laughing between them. It was a glimpse of a future she had once dreamed of, but never thought possible. A month passed, and Michael kept his word. He showed up to every school event, brought homemade lunches with Grace's guidance, and even helped Emma with her art projects. Slowly, the walls Grace had built around her heart began to crack. One evening, as they sat on the apartment's tiny balcony, Grace finally spoke. Emma's been happier than I've seen her in years. You're really trying, Michael. He looked at her, hope flickering in his eyes. I'm not just trying. I am committed. To both of you. She took a deep breath. I've seen that. And I think maybe it's time we start over. Properly. Together. Relief washed over his face. You mean it? Grace nodded, a soft smile on her lips. I want Emma to have her family. And maybe it's time I let go of the past. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael took her hand, intertwining their fingers. I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the years I missed. You and Emma, you're all I've ever needed. Emma burst onto the balcony, waving a new drawing, a family portrait. This time, it wasn't just her and Grace. Michael was right there in the middle, holding both their hands. And as they embraced, Michael knew that no empire, no amount of wealth, could ever compare to the simple, unbreakable bond of family. Breakfast was a chaotic, syrup-filled affair, with Emma directing the pancake making while Michael did his best not to burn them. Grace couldn't help but laugh as flour ended up on Michael's shirt and batter splattered on the counter. After breakfast, they sat around the small dining table, plates empty, but hearts full. Emma was drawing on a napkin, humming to herself. Grace poured another cup of coffee, still processing the whirlwind of the past few days. Michael leaned back in his chair, watching Emma with a quiet smile. I miss this. Just being here. Grace met his gaze, the tension that had always lingered between them finally easing. You know, Emma's always been resilient. She's had to be. But seeing her like this, happy, it's been a long time. Michael nodded, his voice sincere. I'm not just going to be a visitor in her life, Grace. I want to be here. Consistently. Before Grace could respond, Emma looked up from her drawing. Dad, can you come to my school's family day next week? All the other kids bring their dads. The hopeful look in her eyes was enough to break his heart. Michael reached out and took her hand. Of course I will. I wouldn't miss it. Grace's phone buzzed on the counter. She checked the message and frowned. The landlord again. He's been hinting about raising the rent. Michael's protective instincts kicked in. You're struggling to keep up? Grace hesitated, but then nodded. It's been tight lately. I've been picking up extra shifts to cover everything. A thought crossed Michael's mind. What if you and Emma move in with me? I have plenty of space, and it would give us a chance to be together as a family. Grace looked at him, uncertainty in her eyes. That's a big step. I don't want Emma getting her hopes up only to be disappointed again. He moved closer, his expression earnest. I'm not leaving again, Grace. I promise you that. I want us to be a family, properly this time. Emma perked up, excitement flickering in her eyes. Does that mean we'll all live together? Grace bit her lip, still unsure. Michael, I need time to think about it. I've protected her heart for so long. I can't just uproot everything because you suddenly decided you want us back. He nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'll prove it to you both. As they cleaned up, Grace couldn't help but notice how natural it felt. Working side by side, sharing small smiles, Emma laughing between them. It was a glimpse of a future she had once dreamed of, but never thought possible. A month passed, and Michael kept his word. He showed up to every school event, brought homemade lunches with Grace's guidance, and even helped Emma with her art projects. Slowly, the walls Grace had built around her heart began to crack. One evening, as they sat on the apartment's tiny balcony, Grace finally spoke. Emma's been happier than I've seen her in years. You're really trying, Michael. He looked at her, hope flickering in his eyes. I'm not just trying. I'm committed. To both of you. She took a deep breath. I've seen that. And I think maybe it's time we start over. Properly. Together. Relief washed over his face. You mean it? Grace nodded, a soft smile on her lips. I want Emma to have her family. And maybe it's time I let go of the past. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael took her hand, intertwining their fingers. I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the years I missed. You and Emma, you're all I've ever needed. Emma burst onto the balcony, waving a new drawing, a family portrait. This time, it wasn't just her and Grace. Michael was right there in the middle, holding both their hands. And as they embraced, Michael knew that no empire, no amount of wealth could ever compare to the simple, unbreakable bond of family. As for his business, Michael made changes too, handing over more responsibilities to his trusted team so he could focus on a life that truly mattered. He didn't quit being a billionaire, but he finally found a way to balance success with being a present father and partner.